welcome everybody to UO Radio's weekly interview. You'll notice I didn't say guild interview this time. We're doing something a little different that has been long overdue. We are going to interview our own DJViceroy, the station owner, and let everybody who's just joined UO Radio in the past few months get to know a little bit about the radio station, about Vice, his background with UO. In addition, a couple months ago was our 1-year anniversary, so we both figured this is what better time? Let's put it that way. What better time to go ahead and learn about UO Radio for those who are tuning in and listen every day to us, especially on the weekends, here for the interviews and the talk shows. So, with that said, go ahead and say hello to Viceroy. Hello to everybody, Viceroy, and we'll get on with the questioning or the grilling or whatever you want to call it.
Howdy there, everybody. I know you guys are not unfamiliar with me or whatever. If you've been tuning into your radio regularly, you know who I am. Probably more so by now than you've known anybody else for a long time. So I'm definitely glad to be here, and I'm definitely ready to start taking some questions.
Absolutely, and we'll get them to you. Matter of fact, I've got a few, and then if anybody out there has any questions for Viceroy about UO Radio, by all means, get into our IRC chat. If you're unfamiliar how to do that, it's very simple. Just go to uoradio.com, click on the IRC chat link on the left-hand side. That will give you instructions on how to connect. That way you can get into the chat room with everybody else, all the other listeners, and propose any other questions you might have for him today. Needless to say, since this is a one-person interview versus our guild interviews, like where we normally have numerous people with numerous opinions and such, it probably won't be as long as your normal shows. And then before we get on with this, because I know Vice is on the edge of his seat, let me remind you about tomorrow's show. All new format, town hall style. Anybody can get in and talk on tomorrow's talk show. So get a headset, get TeamSpeak. If you don't have TeamSpeak, go to uoradio.com, and you will see instructions right on the main news story for getting TeamSpeak. It's free, so don't worry about it. That way you can get on the show tomorrow. Anybody can. We're not just going to limit it to a panel like we normally do. So, with that said, let's get on with the show. The main thing that I know that all UO Radio listeners want to know, especially myself, because I have always been a UO Radio listener since day one, actually. Pretty much since the day the show went on the air, or the radio went on the air. I did not interact with anybody until last year, though. Emilith dragged me into his show one day. I just couldn't help but respond to something she said. So until then, I knew nothing about UO Radio. I knew none of the people, none of the DJs, anything. So, let's start at the beginning, Vice. Tell us about the roots of UO Radio. How did it start? And how did it evolve to what it's become today? You give us the story. We're all listening.
Sure thing. Pretty much, I was just like a listener or a person who just went around to website, that was Ultima Online related, like many of you guys have. And I came across a really interesting website one day, and it was a website in which I knew as Battle Vortex. And it's still up to this day if you want to go over there and check it out. It's battlevortex.com, and over there they was basically a UO community over there. It's evolved since then as it's incorporated more games into their website and stuff. So it's not so much about Ultima Online anymore as it used to be. But back in the earlier days of Ultima Online, around 2000s and stuff like that. You would have a guy over there by the name of Fear, and he would basically, I just want to make sure everything's going right here. But yeah, there was a guy over there by the name of Fear, and he would pretty much interview, developers and everything on a regular basis. And he would interview people who, basically talked about Ultima Online prior to becoming a developer themselves. So I think one of the people over there was like people like Adric. He was at one point in time a commentator or a co-host over on Battle Vortex, and then he became like the one of the developers for Ultima Online in the earlier days. And I was like really taken back by that. And I was like, wow, that's really neat that that here we are having the Ultima Online fans interacting with the developers, and I think that's really awesome, especially when they're able to do it as quickly as they're able to. I mean, they were getting people like Sunsword at the time, who was the designer. They would get people like RuneSaber, or RuneSabri, or whatever they called him. They had people like Everclear, or not Everclear, but something I forget. And Evercore, that's what it was. And they had people, like Lady Mo and all kinds of people. I mean, they even had the head enchilada guy over there at the time for Origin Systems, which was like the vice president of Origin Systems or something like that, or EA's online game division, and his name was Tyrant. I think it was Gordon Walton. Very interesting to hear, all these different developers give their take and give their feedback about Ultima Online back in the day. So, I mean, they no longer did their shows anymore, and it was kind of like an inspiration about, it was an inspiration as to what kind of led up to the formation of Euro Radio. I was like, it's a shame that we don't have anything like this anymore, for Ultima Online, that we don't have this developer and player relation anymore as like we used to over there at Battle Vortex. Also, for all you people out there who play Siege Perilous, you probably know Battle Vortex probably pretty well, because that was like the place for all the Siege Perilous players to go over there and post on. It wasn't Stratix, it was Battle Vortex. So, all in all, it was a combination of Battle Vortex and UnknownPlayer.com, and they pretty much both did talk shows and everything. For example, UnknownPlayer.com was ran by a guy by the name of Scott Miller, and he ran a show called the Scott Miller Show over there, and he would basically accept call-ins from players to ask his guests questions, about the game, like about Ultima Online and stuff like that. Of course, the drawback to that was, he had hecklers every now and then that would give him hell and stuff like that. But, that's the beauty of the internet and everything, and call-in and talk shows and everything. You get to ask the questions in which normally wouldn't get to be asked of a developer and stuff like that. And that was kind of my inspiration for Euro Radio.
That's good. That's awesome. You mentioned Battle Vortex. Of course, yes, Siege players do know it. Many of them, and this is not a slam against Battle Vortex, stay as far away from it as possible, only because of the, let's just say very liberal, we'll use the word liberal, discussions that go on there, but, it is actually, you're right, the Battle Vortex is a route for a lot of people. Especially the MyUO crowd. I don't know if you went back that far or not, Vice, but if you remember MyUO, before it got transferred over to Stratix, was the forums to be on, and then, of course, people didn't want to go to Stratix, so they went to Battle Vortex. So that is fascinating. We do have one question that I want to throw out right away to you from the audience. They want to know, where do you see UO Radio in the future? And are you content with the current state, or do you want to expand? And if so, how do you want to expand? I added the last bit on there. Well,
to be honest, about the future about UO Radio, I'm always looking for ways to progress and further expand and grow UO Radio. I'm never content. I mean, if you ask anybody around here who pretty much works with UO Radio and everything, you'll quickly find out that I'm not ever quite content. I mean, I think if you just settle for what you got, you're never going to grow as an organization. And and your radio has a lot of potential. I think it has a lot of potential to go into the next generation of reporting online games and stuff like that, and for things like Ultima Online related and stuff. I mean, it really has the potential, which I don't think many other fan sites out there really had that edge yet. And I think we're on the edge of something new in terms of what's yet to come in the future in terms of reporting news for online games and stuff like that. That's where I see your radio going in the future, and I feel really confident about the future. I think we have discovered a new piece of technology, and I think it's working out really well.
Yeah, I agree. I wouldn't be here to this day after, I don't know how long I've been here, 8 months, I guess, or something like that. If I see no future for a project, I move on, as would anybody with common sense. I have all the confidence in the world in your radio, and I'm sure Deadeye over in the IRC channel will back me when he says we have no issue understanding your never being content. Never. I can say this firsthand as an employee, so to speak, or a volunteer, whatever you want to call it. Yes, the man is never content, and it's a good thing. It keeps us on our toes. That's for sure. That is for sure. One thing you mentioned earlier was the involvement of the getting developers involved again. We see them posting on Stratix once in a while. They'll poke their heads up out of the hole like a gopher and say something. Of course, Wilkie always says something because he's the community relations manager. But just to bring forth advices that we're speaking to today, if you're just tuning in, his vision of bringing the community together with the developers and stuff like that is already happening. We have developers who come into our chat room and listen to our radio station, and there are many EA employees that listen to your radio all day long. So you're already there, Vice, as far as that goal goes. Go ahead.
Well, I mean, that's great and everything that they actually tune into a radio station, but I think it's great that they support us and everything and demonstrate that. What I would like to see, though, is more of a move in a direction where we're having actually more of an open dialogue with the developers, like on the radio station, and get them over here on the on TeamSpeak, or get them on the radio with us. That's what I kind of want to move in the direction of, actually having ongoing dialogue where it's not like, well, I'm afraid to say anything, because I might lose my job or anything like that. I mean, I don't want them to be insecure about, coming on any radio station, for that matter, and talking about things. Because I think it's really healthy when you can have an open dialogue between the player base and, I mean, it's one thing to do it in text format, but it's another thing to actually make it more personable, by going actually, verbally talking about some of the things regarding Ultima Online. I think you really connect with the players of Ultima Online more so by going on a radio station or something like that, rather than just typing it out on a forum somewhere. I mean, it really goes a lot further to you because you have and here's something I always like to convey. It's one thing to write something, but it's another thing to actually speak it. Because and what's the pros and cons of typing something and speaking? Well, when you type something, it can easily be misunderstood, misconstrued, or whatever else, because there's no tone with it. There's absolutely no tone. The tone is whatever the reader decides it is. The tone, the reader can actually determine that a post is aggressive, whereas another reader might determine there's no aggressive, words in it at all, or anything, or a tone. So I mean, when you get somebody on the radio talking with you and everything, you can get a better idea as to what their tone is, about their, you get more of a tone with what they're saying, and there's not as much room for error or misunderstanding whenever you do it over the radio or something like that. And that's what I'd like to see happening, because, I mean, that would eliminate a lot of confusion, in my opinion, if the developers were to do more of that rather than doing it all in text format.
Oh, I couldn't agree with you more. the town meetings or the town halls or whatever you want to call them, or the meetups, I'm sorry, the monthly meetups or the bi-monthly meetups or whatever they call them, are great ideas. Because you get to meet the developers, the staff, everybody, production people in person, but they're not frequent enough, and not everybody can get to them. You're talking, 30, 40, 50, maybe 100 people, if it's a big city, will get to a meetup, and it's only once a year in some cities, and maybe every 3 months in Redwood City. If we could get the developers on UO Radio on a weekly basis, a monthly basis, consistently, you're right. I think they could get a message across. Cat Hat could say something and laugh afterwards, and in which case on Stratix, a smiley face just ain't going to cut it. Go ahead, Vice.
Well, see, that's a really interesting point that you bring up. Yeah, they typically have town hall meetups and stuff like that, and that's great and everything, if you want to meet them in person. But, a lot of things with the problem with that is that, it costs EA a lot of money to travel to all these different places to hold these town hall meetings. And also, for example, here's a good example for you. For example, when we was doing a live coverage of the Washington, D.C. UO Town Hall meeting, when they was broadcasting the details of the next expansion, which at the time was UO Modane's Legacy, I think they had over 300 people in attendance, is what I've been told by Arcus and Lucid and everything. 350 people in attendance. That's a lot of people. But at the same time, you have thousands and thousands of players out there who could not even be at that, because you have folks over in Europe, you have folks over in Eastern Asia and Oceania, and they just can't simply make it. It's just not a realistic possibility for them to be there. So, it would actually save people a lot of money, EA money. It would save the players of the game a lot of money in terms of traveling expenses and stuff like that. And it's pretty much the same format. It's just, the only exception is you can't actually see them. That's the only difference is that's what I'm kind of trying to, get them to understand. It's, hey, you can actually reach more people this way through the internet than you can through actual town hall meetings. I'm not saying do away with town hall, but I'm just saying here's another avenue for you to pursue. And for example, and going back to what I was saying about the 300 people in actual attendance at the Washington D.C., we actually had 704 people tune in at our peak for that whole event. So we pretty much just doubled what they had in actual attendance. So I'm arguing with numbers here now.
Well, that was exactly what I was just about to say. Was there were more people listening to UO Radio to the town hall meeting than there were people in attendance. I would love to go to one or two. I've been to two meetups in my entire UO career over in Redwood City in the very, very, very beginning when they first did them. They were very informal back then, but I would prefer to have a more updated thing. Once a year would be awesome, and I think you'll agree with me, Vice, that once a year would be great to meet people face if you can do it, because it's going to be economically more feasible for most people, if they're in the area even, to do a yearly thing. To do something on a more regular basis and keep the users posted on what's going on, answer their questions on a format like UO Radio would be absolutely wonderful. Go ahead.
Well, the thing is this. You just take a look at the most recent UO Town Hall meeting, which I think they did, which was back in Redwood City a few months back. I think that was either January or February, somewhere around there. And there was actually not very many people in actual attendance for that. And I'm not sure exactly why that was the case, but there was just, by the looks of the pictures, there just wasn't very many people there. And I think our reporter there at the time was quoting about 50 to 75 people there in actual attendance, which is a big difference from this and Washington, D.C., So I mean, I don't know if that's a good thing or what. I mean, the question is, whether or not the internet's going to be the future of of marketing or not. And I truly believe it is going to be the future of marketing ideals and products for stuff like this.
Absolutely, it is. If you think about it, now you make great point. People want the convenience of their own home. I mean, just for anything that happens, as far as any entertainment goes, any marketing goes, I am personally would love to sit back and listen to people or developers. I can't wait till we get Aaron on here, which is coming up. Matter of fact, tell us about that, Vice.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's something I've been waiting to get word back on and just haven't quite received it. I would imagine they're waiting for something big to maybe tell us or whatever. I do know we're supposed to have one, but it's kind of like just being held up at the moment. So it's kind of on their end of things. It's in their court, so to speak. Just waiting for word, and when he's ready to actually come over here and speak with us. But I think that would be a great, interview and everything. I'm always looking to find out about the future of your radio, not your radio, but Ultima Online and stuff like that. And I think it'll be an honor to have him over here.
Speaking on that topic, because you're working through the channels right now to get him on the air, and you've had Mr. Tact on here. I remember that interview very well. Give us a rundown. What kind of hoops do you have to jump through to make that thing sort of happen right now? Whereas in the future, maybe, what could be done to make it a more, expedite the process? The NDAs, all that other crap that goes on trying to get people to talk. I mean, hell, we can't even get our regular listener, Samara, because she's an EM, into the talk show because she needs permission, which takes weeks and weeks and weeks. What hoops do you have to jump through, or what are you jumping through right now just to get Aaron on the air?
Well, the thing is, you have to usually go through a chain of command over there at Electronic Arts, and that's what you call bureaucracy. And sometimes, things can be a little slow because, I mean, let's think about it for a minute. You pretty much have to go through the community relations guy, which in this case is Wilkie, and, you have to pitch the idea that you would like to interview somebody and say, hey, we'd like to interview somebody from Electronic Arts, can you give us somebody? And they'll tell you, for example, oh yeah, we can, and let's see who's going to be. And so it takes them a while for them to think about who's going to be, and then they come back and say, well, we can set you up with an interview with so-and-so, and then it's like a yes or no. From there, of course, we're going to say yes, and then it's like, okay, well, and then it's more than once you both agreed as to who you're going to interview. It's then a process of when the interview is going to take place and how long is the interview going to last for. And typically, I always try to go for 2 hours, and they seem to try to keep that down to 1 hour. And then you go through once you've got that all figured out, you go through a process of submitting topics and questions as to what's actually going to be discussed during those interviews and everything, so they can have an idea as what they're going to go into, so that way they ain't blindsided with any unknown questions or anything, because, they like to have all their bases covered, so to speak.
Well, that's what brings up what I was kind of going to get at, was on Stratix, they have sort of their own set of ROC rules of conduct for the developers, so that they're allowed to post on the developers forum or in U-Haul or in the Shard forums. Wilkie will go over to the Siege forum constantly. Well, I shouldn't say constantly, but more than the other developers go to the other forums, I should say. And are able to post there because they know their limits as to what they can talk about and what they can't. What do you think the odds are of us getting something like that from EA, a rule of conduct for an ongoing scheduled interview with any of the developers who would just happen to be available when our shows go on a weekly basis, monthly basis, whatever they agree to? And do you think that's something that might be feasibly worked out with EA?
Well, let me just touch on that a little bit because, rather than directly answering the question, I can give you a better idea as to what kind of problems that we're facing, as a radio station, in particular. Most of the times, whenever, we go out and seek an interview or something on a regular basis, is that you have to pitch the idea to them and say, hey, look, this is why, we think it'd be a great asset to Electronic Arts to you basically come over here on the radio station and speak with us regularly, and here's why. You basically have to make a whole list of proposals and stuff like that, which is something I do on a regular basis. It's kind of like a bit of marketing. You have to sell yourself to, Electronic Arts and say, hey, this is why we think you might want to try this, or would you be willing to try this? But, all in all, what the biggest problem is, I think, is that, for the most part, Stratix pretty much has, exclusive rights over many different aspects where they pretty much have top priority. And that's no secret, I don't think, to the Ultima Online community that they pretty much come first, and then everything else pretty much comes as second and third. But that's something I don't know if it can be changed or if that's something they're looking to change. I do know they're actively reaching out to other communities such as GeoForum, GeoRadio, and other communities and stuff like that. But it's really a question of how quickly is the process going to be, and with all these fan sites trying to vie for their for their attention and everything, it's just like on top of their work schedule and workload, they're already pretty much busy as is, and that's really what the holdup is more than anything else. I don't know if that answers your question or not.
Yeah, absolutely it does. The only point I was getting at was that, a lot of times when I'll ask, back when I was a Stratix reporter, for example, I'd ask to interview an EM or a GM one time. I wanted to interview a game master or whatever you want to call them. And of course I got nailed with like this huge email about, here's the process, here's what they're allowed to talk about, here's what they're not allowed to talk about, and as I worked my way through it, I figured out, okay, that's fine, go ahead, put me down for an interview with one. And then it become almost a legal process. So I can see where you're going through with that. But it always, when I read the NDA, or whatever you want to call them, it always seems like it comes down to, here's what we're not allowed to talk about. They're developers. Of course, they can't talk about what they're working on at the moment, unless it's been posted or whatever. So it just seems to me that the biggest fear is that they're going to leak some information live on the air, and EA's just scared that they're going to leak it subconsciously as they are speaking. Maybe something like that. I don't know.
Yeah, see, and that's something that's I think that's really what kind of scares them off about the internet and everything, because once it's said, it's not something that can be, oops, Whereas in text format, it can actually be edited real easily and everything, and censored and everything else. And censor is not the word I'm trying to use, but, technically it can be edited, it can be modified, it can be like, well, I didn't mean to say that. It can be something that you go back in later on and edit out real easily before it actually gets published anywhere. So, that's the pro from, I would imagine, with text interviews and stuff like that, as opposed to audio interviews, because once it's said and done, it's kind of hard to take it back.
Right. The only argument I would have with that is that nowadays, with the way forums are, back in the day, you'd check on a forum once a day and see if anything's been posted new. Now, you got people sitting there hitting refresh every 5 seconds. And, if Cat Hat, who is very verbal on the forums, were to say something out of line or slip something, somebody's going to catch it and re-quote it. Maybe not just on Stratix, but on 100 different other UO websites. So there again, and I'm in agreement with you, I don't see the argument on EA's side, not argument, but their resistance to go live on the air with us, for the mere fact that, you know what, yeah, they may slip and say something, but they can slip and say something on Stratix too nowadays, and it's going to be quoted in 1,000 places before they get a chance to go in and edit.
Yeah, well, see, that's a very valid point because, whenever it comes to the internet radio, you're typically only going to hear it at one place. And whereas if you're going to, typically, post it in a text format, it's going to be pretty much quoted all over the internet. Whereas in the audio format, you're only going to get it at one single place, which is your radio in this case.
Exactly. And that's a good point. Just to remind everybody, now that Viceroy reminded me, on all of our interviews, even this special one today, which is, just me and Vice, and the talk shows are all recorded and put on UO Radio for download, just so you guys know that. They are edited, of course, for content or length or whatever. Not much, but they are available if you ever miss it or you work on the weekends. Just wanted to plug that, make sure everybody knew that was available.
Yeah, but, see, here's one thing a lot of people don't understand is whenever we do a talk show or interview or whatever, it's actually live, but at the same time we're actually recording it as well, so that way for anybody who wasn't able to, check out the interview or missed it or whatever, for whatever reason, they always have the option of coming back later and checking it out and actually downloading it and stuff like that. So, we get a lot of downloads for our audio files and everything, and, so, I think it's really a great convenience and a great service to many of those folks who couldn't otherwise tune in for a show. So, this way they get their shows without worrying about missing it or whatever. If they missed a part of it or they had to step away from the computer for a minute, they can now come back and download it later and catch the part they didn't get to listen to.
That's exactly the point. It's that, if you can't make it on the weekends, and I can't emphasize this enough, every weekend we do a talk show on each day, Saturday and Sunday. Usually it's a guild interview on Saturdays, and then a talk show on Sundays. And if you can't be here on the weekends, a lot of people on the weekends are doing family stuff. UO Radio, we record the live talk shows. It's great to listen to them live, though. Be the first to hear it. I will highly encourage you to tune in because it's best to hear it live. I always compare it to, you can always listen to a concert recorded a year later on a CD, but it's much better to hear them live in the audience. Besides, you get to catch all the flubs and stuff like that and laugh at them while they're live here in our IRC chat.
Well, yeah, see, that's another thing. The great thing about, actually being there when it's live, you can actually comment and actually have an impact on the direction which the show goes in, believe it or not, because, you do have an influence on the show itself based on the comments over in the IRC, based on the comments over in TeamSpeak, should we have a special guest, and so it's a lot more better, and I think it's going to be a lot more interesting with the talk shows in the future with the new format which we're looking at starting tomorrow, and I think that's going to be really interesting to see how well that goes, and I think that might even determine whether or not Electronic Arts decides whether or not to actually open themselves up to the public for questions and stuff like that rather than going through a question taker or something like they do over on the UO House of Commons.
Yeah, and that was something I wanted to get into. Matter of fact, I'm glad you segued me into our next subject, actually. It was the interaction with UO Radio is what makes it unique from the other formats out there on the internet. You can sit on Stratix all day long, and you have two options to interact with people. You can post a reply, or you can PM them. On UO Radio, whether it's the interviews or while the DJs are on the air, you're interacting, and I always emphasize that during my shows. You can't climb into your car and scream at the DJ to play a song you want, but you can do that on UO Radio. The same goes for the talk shows, and as you touched on, our past talk shows, we listen to the IRC chat, or we watch it rather, and take the questions out of there. And there are times where we will pull people out of the IRC chat and pull them into the audience. It's like being on a real talk show that you would watch on daytime television, so to speak, except without all the drama and cousins marrying each other kind of stuff. With that said, going into the new talk show format, why don't you give us a rundown? I've kind of been hinting at it on my shows through the last week, ever since you spilled the beans about it. Tell us about what the new format is going to be about and what your ideas and where you hope to see that go.
Well, it's great that you bring that up and everything, because what I'm looking to hope to accomplish with that is this. First of all, you're going to need a microphone or a headset with a microphone, because you need to speak with us. You need to be able to verbalize it. And it's one thing to actually type in text, but it's so much more of a convenience to be able to actually speak and convey your thoughts and opinions. And as long as it's done in a civil manner, I mean, I don't see any problem with any opinion, whether it's, of good taste or not. I mean, for example, I don't mind, so much if somebody don't like a certain aspect of the game, because I'm going to be totally unbiased for the most part. I mean, I try to be as, what's the word, impartial to every opinion. And, I do have my own opinions and everything, but at the same time, you have to understand that everybody's going to have their own opinions. And so I'm kind of hoping to opening up as a, trial to see how it goes and see what kind of hecklers, if we have any, if we're going to have hecklers or not. That's going to be one determination as to whether or not we continue. Just as long as people don't curse and keep it in a civil manner and not screaming at the top of their lungs and everything, I don't see any problems at all. Hopefully not. And so, I mean, depending on how well this goes, this might be able to, we might be able to use this later on to sell EA on the idea of, hey, why not allow the players ask you questions directly and interact with you directly, more so in a moderated format. So in a lot of ways, it's going to be kind of like the Stratix House of Commons. But the only difference is it's going to be on TeamSpeak, which is moderated, and the people actually get to basically signal to us whenever they have a question. We, basically give them the voice status, and they ask their question, and and then after they ask their question, we take away their voice status, and then give the developer a chance to respond to the question. And that's pretty much the kind of format the talk show is going to be in. Kind of like a moderated format, just like the House of Commons, but it's just not going to be pre-screened. That's the difference.
Yeah, it sounds awesome. Ever since you pitched the idea at me, I'm looking forward. I'm very anxious about tomorrow. Actually, I can't wait for it. For the mere fact that it is going to be exactly like that. And the first thought that came to my mind was comparing it to, I didn't even think of House of Commons, but to me, it was like, let's have a meetup on the internet. Let's have an internet meetup. And that's what it's going to be like, because we're going to, on the talk shows we've had in the past, for example, we have a diverse crowd, even when it's just been UO radio staff. You, myself, and Deadeye, for example, the three of us come from such different worlds in UO, as far as our play styles go, that when we get together, we've always had civil and very great conversations. I'm looking forward to seeing now drawing in more people. There have been times where I know you and I both wanted to drag everybody we could in from the IRC chat in just to get all those people in there. It's tough. But I'm looking forward to seeing how this works out, and this is going to be fun, because yes, I do think you're right. This is going to be the equivalent of a Hall of Commons is a good example. Go ahead.
Well, the thing about the talk show tomorrow and everything is that, a lot of people can understand, or have a pretty good idea as to, what our views and opinions are by now. I mean, hell, we've done this, 35 times already. I don't think it's quite as much of a secret anymore as to where we all stand. So I kind of want to get some new blood in here, new opinions, new thoughts, and everything else. Because, in a lot of ways, believe it or not, the developers actually tune in for the talk shows and stuff like that. So rather than hearing the opinions of a select few people, I'd rather get the opinions of a UO community at large, because, that's really what I think they would like to have is more of a broader, range of opinions and stuff like that. Plus, when you invite more people in and you bring more people in, you get different views and takes on different things. For example, you get, currently, with the way we've been doing it, it's been, the views of Siege Perilous, the views of production shards, and the views of German shards, and the views of, sometimes Japanese and Oceania shards. So, it's been pretty much a take from all these different shards. And that's what I want to try to accomplish around here at UO Radio is, take all these different views and opinions from different parts of the world where they have different traditions, different cultures, in different play styles and stuff like that. And you could take them all together and get thoughts and opinions on many different aspects of the game and how to improve on them and stuff like that. And it gives the developers more feedback. So, I think that's going to be a great thing for, the Ultima Online community when it's all done and over.
Yeah, I agree 100%. One thing I just wanted to ask before we move on and hear about your UO background is you mentioned the different cultures and stuff like that. I know that we do have one German-speaking DJ on our staff, and we have one DJ who speaks fluent Spanish. Where are we looking at as far as bilingual, not radio shows or channels or anything like that, but maybe for the talk shows, where if we have somebody that does come in from Drachenfels, for example, can we get our German DJ to translate the question for, let's say we have an EA rep in there down the road. Can we get, do you see that being something that we might be offering?
Well, that's a good question that you bring up there. We actually tried that a while back. I would say around episode number 15 of the UO Radio Talk Show or something like that, somewhere around there. We invited some players over from the Japanese shard, and we actually had a Japanese translator who could speak both English and Japanese. The guy was from Scotland or something like that, if I remember correctly, and he was working over in Japan. And he knew almost, I guess, fluent Japanese or something. And he was pretty much taking this person's question, who was going by the name of Four. Weird name, but, that was his name over, and he played on a Japanese shard, and he was Japanese. Didn't know English or anything like that. And he came over here, we was basically relaying thoughts and opinions between the Japanese and the American community for the most part. And I thought it was a great asset, because you get to understand the other communities a lot better, because and you get to remove the language barrier, which has been separating the two communities for so long. We don't know what the Japanese player base is thinking. We don't even know if they agree or even share the same thoughts and opinions as us. That's the kind of things I always wonder about whenever we have, like the Japanese and Asian community over in Asia. I'm kind of wondering what are their thoughts about the game, what are their thoughts and opinions. But, I can't really find anybody who really knows how to speak both Japanese and English, and that's the hardest problem. I like to do more interaction with them, but, believe it or not, and if my memory serves me correctly, I think Draconi can even speak Japanese. To what extent, I don't know, but I do know, if I remember correctly, I think he even spent some time over there living in Japan and everything, so I think he can speak Japanese, and I've actually been trying to encourage him to try to get over with the Japanese community and maybe have a interview with the Japanese community over at Lamaya Radio, which stands for the Llama Shop in Japanese, and I think that would be great, if and what interest does it serve in me? nothing. It's no benefit to me at all. But I do want to see, the community have more of an interaction with the developers on a more personable level. And that's what I'm trying to accomplish here, with Yo Radio, and try to get Electronic Arts to look into more so. Did I answer your question with that?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I think the only thing I would add or ask is, yeah, you're right, with Draconi speaking Japanese. Yes, that is exactly, a matter of fact, he and Catherine, my friend from Siege Perilous, who's a very frequently Yo Radio listener, both sat and had a absolute, complete Japanese conversation for a while, because she's over there right now. But yes, you're right. We do need that. The problem is, what we need to do is we need to draw somebody from, and correct me if I'm wrong, but we need to draw somebody from the native country of Japan in who can also speak English, because from what I understand, maybe I'm thinking of China, but as far as I know, Japan as well, English is taught to them as a second language. So most of them should be able to talk English. From what I understand, they choose not to when they're in a game and stuff like that. Japan is a huge market. We would definitely love to reach out to them. I'm sure you would. Matter of fact, comment on that. In the meantime, we do have a huge German market as well. I don't know if Town Drunk speaks German or not, from his time over there. But we do have our own DJ who speaks German. Maybe is it possible to bring them in and just have them on the standby as a staff, just in case somebody starts talking in German, or I wish we could get permission to have Draconi in there, because he could do the Japanese and the Latin, because he does speak Latin too, from what I understand.
Well, see, that brings up a very good point, and you did mention something. You mentioned the word standby, and just on that note and everything, I do want to just quickly announce that we are going to be opening up a new program here at Yo Radio here in the future, which we haven't done before, which is going to be basically the Standby DJ program, which we're going to be basically recruiting those who wanted to become a DJ, but there just wasn't no open slots available for them. We're going to open up a new program called the DJ Standby program, which is basically, train them and show them the ropes of how to DJ and everything, and basically have them on standby anytime a DJ doesn't show up, or a DJ can't make it, or whatever, or an opening becomes available. We can stick them in there, and and not have these gaps in our schedule as long as over a period of time, as long as we've been having in the past. So, I'm always looking to wait for new ways and ideas to innovate the radio station, and I think this is going to be a great program. So for all those people who have applied in the past and haven't heard anything back from us, we'll probably be contacting you in the near future saying, hey, how would you like to be in the standby DJ program and stuff like that. So that's something we're thinking about. And going back to your question about, having people on standby for, translating stuff, I like to bring them more into the, into the loop of things. But, Llama Yacht Radio has their own radio station and stuff like that. As to what extent, the developers actually interact with Llama Yacht Radio or whatever, I don't know. All I can do is hopefully put the get the dialogue open between the two stations, the Japanese radio station and the American radio and electronic arts, and that way they can have this dialogue to where maybe something can possibly happen between the two. That's what I'm kind of hoping for.
Good. That's good to hear, as a matter of fact. Eggman's in there going, DJ Egg. Eggman, I would absolutely love to hear another English accent on the radio again. It's been a while since we had one of those. Anyways, let's go on to learning more about Viceroy. How about your roots? We've talked about UO Radio's roots, where it started, where it's gone, and now where it's at, and where you hope to see it go. Where did you start in UO? Where'd you start out? What was your first character, your first shard? Give us the history of Viceroy.
Well, yeah, let me go ahead and start off. First of all, I started playing Ultima Online back in early December. I would say December 4th, 1997, if I remember correctly, the exact date. That's when I first started playing Ultima Online. And I remember coming into this world of Ultima Online, and I remember actually reading about it. And let me kind of back up a little bit. How I found out about Ultima Online and the way I discovered Ultima Online was I was actually reading a magazine, I think it was PC Gamer magazine or whatever, back in 1997. I just got my first computer. It was an IBM Activa 166 megahertz Pentium 2 MMX technology. It had 32 megabytes of RAM. I think it had like 4 gigabytes of hard drive space, a 33.6K modem or something like that. And it was like top of the line back then. I paid $3,000 for it. I was like, whoa. So, I had me a computer and everything. I was, just learning HTML because I was bored with everything else. I had been playing on an online gaming network called 10, which is Total Entertainment Network, playing games like, Master of Orion 2 and stuff like that, and then that network closed down and they ceased to exist and everything. I don't know what happened to them. They just died out. And so once that network died out, I no longer had an online game to play anymore. And I was like, wow, that sucks. So once that happened and everything, I went and started looking for a new game and everything to start playing online. Because I was getting into the online gaming market. I started playing a game called Air Warriors 2 and everything, and then that game just died out and everything. Actually burned out one of my PCs as much as I played the game. Or should I say monitors. Yeah. So I had to get that replaced and everything. So, and then, like one day I was really bored, because all these online games that I was playing were getting out of the market, closing down shop and leaving. So I started looking at PC magazines and stuff like that, and came across this magazine. I think it was PC Gamers or something like that, or Game Pro or something like that. Hell, if I remember. But anyways, I was just reading through this magazine, came across an article about Ultima Online, and what really sold me on the idea of the game and everything was that it was online. It was a medieval settings. I was like, wow, cool. I see people sparring in these screenshots in this article. And I was reading up about it, how the game was fun and how these people were arguing about, they basically had two different guys arguing about the pros and cons of the game. And I was like, wow, this looks like a game I could actually play, because at the time I was playing a game called Lords of the Realm. And I think that was the name of the game. And it was actually a medieval game. And I thought, man, this is right up my alley. It's a medieval game. Has people sparring with one another. And so I went out and got the game that very day. I just remember, and I was 15 at the time, so I was still like a dependent and everything, still living at home. So I bugged my dad and mom. And I was like, Mom, Dad, I want to get this game. It looks awesome. And they're like, oh, how much is this going to cost? We just spent $3,000 on a new computer. I said, please, Mom, Dad, let me get this game for, the computer and everything. And then they just about freaked out when they realized there was going to be an online subscription fee along with that as well. So here was a game I was purchasing back in 1997 that was about $45 to $50, and then on top of that, $10 a month fee, which was $9.95 back then. And they were just like flipping out, and they was like, oh no, and on top of AOL on a second phone line, so I didn't tie up the home phone line. And we were spending about $100 a month. Because AOL back then was like 20. I think it's still the same price, $21.95 a month. And then you had the $9.95 a month for the Ultima Online. That was what, 30 or $40 right there. And then you had the extra phone line, which was another $25, so that was $55 a month or something like that, right there. Just to be able to play the game, and they was just freaking out. They was like, "Oh, you're gonna have to get a job and everything." And so I went and got me a job. Started a job working as a cashier and everything at Winn-Dixie and everything, which is a grocery store. So that's how I funded my little operations for Ultima Online. Got into the game, and yes, I was young, and so I got into the game, and I started out in a place at the time which I didn't even know where the hell I was. I was totally lost. I thought the NPCs were actual players and everything back then, and I kept talking to these NPCs, and they talk back and everything. I was like, wow, getting all excited and stuff like that. And I tell you, it was really excitement because these NPCs were talking with me and everything. And I asked them a question, they wouldn't respond in the right manner, and I was like, what's wrong with these people? Talk to me. Then I came across this player who just so happened to run by me and everything, and then I realized the differences between the two. Started talking with the player. He gave me some stuff. He gave me like a wooden shield, which was a a great item back then and everything. Gave me like a little sword to start out with, and I went running some direction, I guess to the east of Trisnik or whatever, along some road. And next thing I know, I'm running across past lizardmen and everything, and they're hissing at me and everything, and I get slain and I died, and I was like, oh, well, that sucks, start out a game and die. But, I mean, it was so much excitement in the game for me, and then I was like, well, I don't even know what the hell I'm doing, so I deleted the character, started out and made a new character called King of You. That's the actual only character first character that I can actually remember of, one of the first few characters I can remember. Started out in U, was playing around U, and actually hunting around there, I was going around as a warrior, had a halberd and stuff like that, going around slaying, bears. And at the time, grizzly bears were actually red creatures. I mean, they would aggro against, attack you and stuff like that if you came across them. So if you came across a grizzly bear, you was running for your life. But there was so much fun and excitement because you would have these monsters chasing after you. You would have PKers hiding in ambush around you in the woods, and you never knew quite what to expect. You didn't have an economy or anything like that. Didn't have reagents or anything like that. So everything had to pretty much come from a distance. I mean, you had to go to Britain to get all your supplies, pretty much. If you wanted, there wasn't no Smith shop in you. There wasn't no reagent shop in you. There wasn't no tailor shops or anything like that. So you had to go all the way to Britain for your supplies. So people started setting up trade outposts and stuff out around you and selling reagents on their vendors and stuff like that at a markup price. And it was pretty cool because I thought that was a really unique concept that, people could actually stimulate or grow an economy of their own in a city that didn't have one. So, I mean, I loved that concept and everything. And so I went around as a player called King of You. And then I was like, well, this title isn't appropriate for what I'm doing, because I'm not a king, because we already have a king. We have, Lord British, we have Lord Blackthorn and everything else. So I went and made myself a new character and named him Viceroy of You. And that's always been my main character. That's been my main warrior character. I still have him to this day. And so I went around, and in case you don't know, a viceroy is basically a king or a person who's appointed to rule a country in the absence of a ruler. So basically, you're appointed king of a region by another king. So, for example, just to give an example, for whenever the United Kingdom had control over India and it was part of the Commonwealth, India had a viceroy, which was a king who ruled in the place of the King of Britain or whatever at the time. So they kind of, governed the region and everything. So I was the Viceroy of You, self-appointed. So, I mean, I had a great time back in the old days and everything. And I remember that when there was this bug and everybody's hair turned white overnight and everything, and then they gave everybody like a free hair dye and everything. I never even once dyed my hair. I just left it white. I was like, well, I aged, and aged in the game, so I'll leave it white rather than coloring it back. So I left it white, and it was pretty awesome. Still got my white hair to this day. Still got many of the stuff that I've done. And back in the old days, I pretty much just went around and pretty much as Viceroy you, I got tired of you and tired of hunting around creatures and stuff like that. And my friends were leaving the game at the time, and it was like, wow, that sucks. They quit the game for whatever reasons, I don't know at the time. I thought the game was still awesome. So I eventually got tired of having to run back and forth between Britain and you, so I decided to make Britain my new home. Because that's where everything was at. The economy, items, and everything I needed to play my game. It was all in Britain. And I loved the city life, so I moved to Britain. So when I got over there in Britain and everything, I went to the graveyard of Britain, and I was like, wow, there's some people around here. And so little did I know they were PKers. So every time I go to Britain and the Britain graveyard, there was always PKers in there and everything. I was like, man, this sucks, lose all my stuff and everything. And then, I died so many times to them and everything that they just gradually accepted me into their little club of PKers and everything. So I became one of them. Not a PKer, but more of a thief. I would go around taunting players and, steal from them. And, get them to attack me. Because whenever you stole back from a player back then, you would go gray and everything, and then they could attack you. And so what I did is develop my character into like a fencer / archer, / thief. So I go up to you and steal your reagents or something like that, get you really upset and make you want to attack me. And then you would attack me, and then I would just simply take out my Chris, my fencing weapon, beat you down. And then you go off running, and so I go chasing after you. And then if I couldn't get close enough to you, or close enough to where I could beat you down even more, I just pulled out the bow and arrow and shot you down. Yep. And then you would hit the ground, and I would loot you and everything else. And I could even chase you into town, which was the nice part about it, is, because the guards couldn't do nothing. It was kind of funny watching people go back into town, scream guards, even though they attacked me. They attacked me as though they was in town, with me attacking them in town, and they couldn't do nothing because they initiated the whole thing and everything. So it's like, well, you started it, so now finish it. So I mean that was the way I thrived back then and everything, and I built my first home near the mines north of Britain, which is where I still have my home today. It's a bigger house now, but my first home was like a little small. I guess it would be an 8x8. Them little small plaster houses. I mean the original houses. I mean that was my first home and everything. And it was along that little grassy path near south of the mines north of Britain. And I always mined there and everything. I was like, wow, So I started forming a guild. And it was called the National Guards of Britannia. So, our guild colors back then were red and black and everything. So it was basically a guild of friends around the graveyard and everything. We pretty much... I don't know what possessed me to name it the National Guards of Britain, even when I pretty much stole from the players. But hey, I was a kid, and I was being very creative with my thoughts, and I was getting out there and just going all over the place and wrecking havoc, and that was fun. I just remember the old days of the crossroads of Britain being a PKer's heaven, just like the graveyard. Near Despised is which was where I went and hunted a lot. Back in the old days, back in 1997, I always went and hunted in the dungeons there. I occasionally went to Shame as well and stuff. But really, the two most dungeons I went and ever fought in and stuff like that was Despise and Shame, and those were pretty much my favorite dungeons until they started really screwing things up there, changing out the monsters and everything else, and it's just got really boring. And it's like, wow, I was really happy with the way things were back then. But it's and then back into, and then later on down the road and everything, I started getting involved with bigger guilds and everything. Met a new people that lived close in my area in real life. They lived in Irving, Texas, and I lived in Euless, Texas, and And I got to knowing these people, and I was like, wow, apparently we live really close to one another, and so I joined their guild based on that and everything, and then it turned into a real-life friendship between them, and they were a married couple and everything, and we became great friends, and I became like the third in command of this guild. We really grew and expanded this guild over on Chesapeake, and it became known as the LLK, which was the Lords of the Lost Kingdom, and our guild colors were pretty much a black robe and a golden cloak, golden yellow cloak, and so that was the color, because you didn't have the neon colors back then. You had yellow, so it was more of a yellowish, cloak and everything. So that was our guild colors, and then we changed them several times during the legacy of the LLK. But with under my leadership, it pretty much grew and expanded over to incorporate like 100 plus members and everything. So it was a really large guild. I was third in command. And we had a unique system which I pretty much suggested implementing into the guild, which was a ranking system. And what we did, it's just basically, because we had a king and queen in our guild, which was the first and second command, the couple that I was referring to earlier. We had King John, and it was Queen Melissa or something like that. So, they were, of course, the rulers of the guild. It was based more of a monarchy system in our guild. And we had royalty, because Lords of the Lost Kingdom, right? So, anyways, we had a ranking system, which basically was your royal ranks and titles. For example, you had a page, which was the lowest royal title you could possibly achieve. And then we had the squire, you had the knight, you had the baroness or baronet, then you had the baron, then you had the count, then you had the countess, and then you had the, archduke or whatever, and then you had, duke, and then so on and so on, and then you went up to princess, which is the next highest royal, one of the highest, but duke was the highest. And so pretty much what we did is we branched our guild out into different cities, because everybody liked to play in different cities or reside around different cities, because back then you pretty much could find people in just about any city. You could go to Lucia, you could find people there. You could go to Trisnick, you could find people there. You could go to Britain or and you could always find people anywhere just about. Nowadays you pretty much find everybody in Britain and Luna. That's pretty much where you always find people. Go to Trisnick or something, or you typically ain't gonna find nobody there. And that's how times have changed. But during this time period, 2000 and everything, everybody was everywhere. You could find people everywhere. So we had basically a governor of each town who would basically recruit for the guild in every town, and basically manage the guild affairs. It's kind of like a sub-guild, but manage the guild affairs for that town. So, if the players of the guild resided in this town for the most part, that was their hometown. And, and the governor in our guild would govern over all the players who resided around Britain or whatever. So it was really a great game and everything, back then and everything. And it was a really unique system that really helped our guild grow a great deal. And I took such sheer pleasure in playing and all that. So, we're pretty much a tramming guild, and that's right. Even though in my earlier days I was a hardcore PP, player versus player guy, I went over to Trammel, and I was kind of disappointed about Trammel, though, because of the fact that Trammel, pretty much introduced, devalued my house, and everybody went over to Trammel, so that's where I went, too, Didn't really have much of a choice there. But, it worked out, I guess, because, I don't know. But that was pretty much the story of the life of Viceroy, and then, things kind of went kind of south after that, with the game overall, and I just kind of been losing more interest in the game, so now, I'm trying to do the talk show in hopes to spur some life back into the game, or vouch for what I used to like. And hopefully one day we'll see something like that, whether it be a new shard or a pre-Ren shard or something like that, or a pre-AOS shard or something. Because, I kind of so badly want to relive those days and everything. And And I'm kind of hoping one day we'll see something like that here in Ultima Online when we play. But you know, I'm sorry I went on so long, but that's pretty much the life of Viceroy. I mean, that's eight or 9 years worth of Viceroy right there. So I mean, that's how I came about in the game. And believe it or not, what I failed to mention earlier is that Euro Radio started out in 2005. That's when it really took off, believe it or not, because a lot of people don't even know that Euro Radio had previously tried to take off back in 2004, and it just didn't go nowhere, and so it failed. You know, I couldn't find nobody. I couldn't find people to come over here and run the radio station with me. I didn't have a great host back then. So, I mean, I was really having a struggle, you know, running a radio station and everything. And so, you know, I don't know. But, yeah, you know, did you have any questions?
No, I was enjoying it, actually, especially the great host part. No, I'm kidding. I know exactly where you come from with the old days stuff. And of course, you're not going to get Spider Bites 10 years or 9 years or whatever of history. But I remember when you mentioned talking to the NPCs, that really got a chuckle out of me, because I remember sitting in the tavern in Britain during beta and sitting there trying to talk to one of the waitresses, thinking she was a character, another player. And she talked back to me, but instead of being an NPC, she all of a sudden went, "Do you mind trying to sit on that bench for me, please?" And I went, "Huh?" She's like, "Please, for a second, could you just sit on that bench? I just need to test something." And I'm going, "Why?" So I sat on the bench, and it didn't work. I was still standing. She said, "Okay, step away." "Okay, thank you very much," and then disappeared. And I was flabbergasted. And then we had forums back then, but back then it was even before MyUO was available. There was other forums where us beta testers gathered, and somebody told me, yes, there's a developer running around having people test different systems, and that was a bug. You couldn't sit on benches back then. So I was that was one of my original memories. Go ahead, Viceroy, because as a matter of fact, the next subject I want to get into is your most memorable moments.
Yeah, well, I pretty much already described those memorable moments during my whole 9 years and everything. You know, basically running in the large guild, you know, the old days of stealing and PKing people, and those are probably the most memorable moments of UO for me. And so, I mean, I think that part's already been pretty much covered. But, you know, the thing about the Euro Radio today that I think is so unique and everything, a lot of people think, and I don't know if I've already covered this or not, but a lot of people think, you know, a lot of these people that I bring on Euro Radio or whatever as staff members or DJs or whatever, they think that I know these people personally or something. And the truth be known, I don't know any of these people. I've never known Deadeye prior to him coming on the radio station. I've never known you, Spider-Bite, prior to you coming on the radio station. I've never known any of these people prior to coming on the radio station. In fact, most of the people that come on the radio station have had no previous experience or connections with me at all, believe it or not. So this whole radio station has been pretty much ran by people strictly as volunteers, not friends or anything, but, you know, volunteers. But, of course, now that, you know, you all have been with us for a long time, like you, Spider-Bite, and Deadeye, you've all become, you know, more than just somebody who's working on the radio station. You all have been part of Euro Radio, and you're now part of Euro Radio, and, like friends and everything, you know, part of the family. So, I mean, it's definitely a neat way of looking at it to know that you can still meet people from the game and interact with people from the game that you didn't otherwise know before. And I think that's really a unique experience. Coming into Euro Radio and everything, I really didn't have much public speaking skills like I do now. But, after a year of doing it and everything, you pretty much develop those kind of skills. And so, and I would say I had more of a self-esteem issue. I had more of a lack of confidence issue. And I think those have really come a long ways since then. And so, if anything, that I can take away from here, I can definitely say it's been self-esteem, public speaking skills, and other things such as that. That's something I can always take with me for the rest of my life. And I'm only 24 now. Started this game when I was about 15 or 16. And I think Draconi started about the same time. Me and him are pretty much close to the same age. I'm a little bit older than him by a few months, I think. But, and I think Draconi, believe it or not, I think he's like the youngest person over there on the UO developer team.
Yeah, you're right, he is. And you know what? You make a great point about the staff. I don't think I knew anybody except as radio personalities when I came to UO Radio as a staff member. Prior to that, I was a lurker. I listened constantly since day one. And you're right. After you become a staff member, it's not like a clique like you would get in a guild on UO or anything like that. It's like family. And I don't want to compare it to going to the office because it's not like work. But you have no problem, and these people are your friends, and they're people you will talk to every single day. So let's go back real quick and just touch up on your standby DJ program that you announced earlier, because this would be a great opportunity to push that one more time. Being on the EA staff, that'd be nice, wouldn't it? We'd all get great paychecks. Being on the UO Radio staff, while you may not have any experience, you will walk away with it. And everybody, the station managers, your fellow DJs, we are here to help each other constantly. I can't count how many times I've had a fellow DJ or a station manager give me a hand with something, whether it was with the program I was using, getting on the air, whatever. They're always there to help you, and they're always there in the chat channel to cheer you on. So you're right. It is 100% like a family, and that is exactly what it feels like to me. Like a family, you're going to have your spats once in a while, but those are always handled discreetly, taken care of, and put behind you, and you're talking like your buddies the next day. UO Radio is completely nothing like the forums, nothing like the Stratix forums, nothing like UO in-game. It's a community altogether, and that's what I wanted to touch on a little bit in a little bit there, but it looks like you have a comment. Go ahead, Vice.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of things that, even a person with no skills or previous experience, believe it or not, a lot of people who have come to UO Radio and left UO Radio in the past have actually put down on future applications whenever they go apply for a job that they've worked with UO Radio. So believe it or not, people are actually putting this on their job applications or their resumes and stuff like that they've worked with UO Radio, believe it or not. So, that's kind of impressed me that, people was actually putting this down on their resumes and job applications and stuff like that, whenever they go apply somewhere. And I think that's a great thing. And, the thing about UO Radio is that, that I feel so strongly about. I feel like UO Radio really does a great deal of pulling the community together, which, other communities have failed to do, in my personal opinion. I won't actually specify which ones, but, I just feel like, there's some communities out there that are, take a too heavy-handed approach, and then there's, I feel like everything needs to be done in moderation. Sometimes you get into these communities, they're done to the extreme and everything. And, I think everything needs to be done in moderation. As long as it's done in a civil and professional manner, I think everything will go smoothly. What I like to see more with anything else here at UO Radio, I like to see a community grow here at UO Radio in the form of IRC, the forums, and stuff like that. That's what I'm kind of hoping to do here with Yo Radio, is to actually build a community that we can be proud of, a community that we can, spend time together and play games together with and stuff like that. Share interests together. Really, here at Yo Radio, it doesn't even have to be Ultima Online. It could be Battlefield 2. I know some guys on here on Yo Radio IRC that get on here and play Battlefield 2 with me. Some in here are trying out EVE Online for the first time. And we're playing that together. So there's a lot of different avenues for Yo Radio to go branch off into, and that's the purpose of a community here at Yo Radio and everything. And that's just have a great time. Come together as a community rather than distance yourself from everybody and say, well, to hell with everybody. Just because you don't like the game anymore, or you don't like the direction it's going into, doesn't mean you have to, separate yourself from it. You could still be a part of the community and play other games. There's nothing that says, well, once you're done with Ultima Online, you have to leave the community. I think that's a common misconception there. I don't know if you agree with me on that, Spiderbite.
Oh, no, I agree 100%. I've seen so many friends come and go over the years. I've seen so many friends come and go that, and a lot of them have been painful. Some of them I've lost to real life death, or other means. They just quit the game, as simple as that. They got married and just weren't allowed to play anymore. But I still like to keep in touch with them, and that's part of the community. And I know these people still enjoy Ultima Online, or remember it, and what's the word I'm looking for? Nostalgia. It brings them back to talk about it. Of course I do, and I've been very vocal and public about it, is that I don't like the quitters who quit, angrily, but still continue to post and complain, on UO forums, I take that completely back, strike that from the record. That is not what I meant. UO Hall. Yes, I love UO forums, okay, I'm sorry, people. Don't even take that. I can already hear somebody across the ocean screaming, and it was not intentional. Stratix, UO Hall. You hear them bitch and moan. And yes, those are the only people that quit that I don't enjoy hearing. I wish they'd go away. But as far as community goes, you answered my question that I was coming up next, which was what could you change about the community of UO and how it interacts with all the shards and that sort of thing. But as far as UO Radio is concerned, how do you see that moving forward and expanding to reach that goal that you're talking about? What do you have planned, in other words?
Well, I kind of hope that eventually, as UO Radio continues to grow bigger and bigger in size, that maybe eventually we can grow into a bigger radio station and incorporate other online games in which players out there who also play Ultima Online also enjoy playing as well. For example, I know a lot of people out there play both Ultima Online and World of Warcraft. Not that I play World of Warcraft, nor do I care to. But it's some games like these, there's a lot of players that play both Ultima Online and EVE Online and stuff like that. There's players that play Battlefield 2 and Ultima Online out there. So, that's what the kind of avenues I'm looking to really expand Yo Radio into, is into because right now Yo Radio is like an inner shard Ultima Online community. We have people from many different shards. We have people from the Europa community. We have people from the Atlantic community. We have people from, Dragonspell community. We have people from, Oceania community. We have people from the Chesapeake community. You name the communities, you pretty much have them over here in the IRC chat. And I would strongly encourage people to get over here in the IRC chat, because I remember back in the old days, back in 2000 when I used to get over on the Stratix IRC network, and there was just the official Ultima Online channel, which is, I don't know, I'm not going to say it. But they used to have tons of people in there. They used to have 60 to 80 people in there at any given time. You don't ever see that anymore, you know. You don't really see, you know, those people in there, you know. You pretty much go over there nowadays, it's just a dead channel. And I don't want to see your radio channel come into that, you know. If it's something else you want to talk about it. You know, if that's what got to keep the conversation going, talk about it. You know, that's what I want to see. You know, it doesn't have to be strictly about Ultima Online. It can be about whatever it is that you're doing. It could be about real life. You know, it's supposed to be more of a social lounge or a social gathering. You know, hey, you know, I like to do this. Well, I like to do it too. You know, and then that's how you form friends and find new people to play games with and stuff like that. You know, it's about enjoying yourself. It's not about, you know, just playing one particular game. And that's what, you know, I think is the misconception, is that a lot of people think it's just about one particular game, but it's about enjoying yourself. And, you know, and that's what I always try to encourage people to do. Come in here, enjoy yourself, but, you know, don't be disruptive, you know. And by disruptive, I mean don't come in here, you know, cussing up a storm, screaming at the top of your lungs, cursing everybody, and blaming everybody for the destruction of, you know, a certain play style or whatever that's forced you out of the game or whatever. You know, and as far as people on U-Haul and everything voicing their opposition to the game or the direction the game's going in, I like to hear them. You know, I like to hear those who are against something, but do it so in a civil manner and not in these long essays. I don't like essays. I like paragraphs. And a few paragraphs, not essays. So, I mean, as long as you're going to make a short and quick and valid points, that's what I want to see. I want to see what you think about the game and how you can support your arguments as to what you think about the game today. And that's what I want to see, you know, from the Ultima Online community. If you no longer play Ultima or whatever.
Yeah, I agree with you, especially on the essays. And those who know me from U-Haul know that my Stratix name is Mandolin, of course. For those who don't know, and I'm probably gonna get a bunch of ICQs all of a sudden going, "That's you?" Because they didn't look at my signature or they turned off signatures.
You're gonna get a bunch of hate mail.
I hope so. When I jab at them, it's usually only at the ones who do that sort of thing. Those people that make valid points, I'm with you. I like to hear the valid point in the first 6 sentences. When you were in English class, in grade school, well, maybe high school, they taught you to start out with a paragraph that states what your subject is about. These people don't do that. They go on for pages, and then at the end, and this is what's the kicker, and this will always get a response from me. You're going to get the WTF kitty if it's about scripting, or you're going to get something else from me. But it's going to be, I'm quitting because of this, or EA is going to shut down UO. Don't end it with that. Don't make speculations. That drives me out of my mind. I don't know if you agree with me on that, Viceroy, but if you're going to make a valid point, make a valid point. Don't start your subject out with, the game's shutting down tomorrow, I quit, or any of the above, okay?
Yeah.
I'm sure you agree with me on that and have some comments on that as well.
Well, yeah, you know, usually whenever I go reading a post, if it's and here's something to keep in mind whenever anybody who's thinking about going to post a post at all, keep in mind that a lot of people don't want to sit there and read an essay. Most people will skip an essay. So if you're going to write this huge post, you can forget about it. You might as well make several posts to get that point across, you know, in different segments. But, you know, because I guarantee you, if you write them in little short segments, then you're more likely to get your point across. But if you write this one huge post, a lot of people are going to skip over, and that's something I've realized because I sit there and read it myself. And that's something I always try to limit on my writing and everything because I like to go into details. But instead of going into details, I always say, well, I don't like this aspect of the game, and here is why. I get straight down to the key points of my argument. I say, for example, a little while back I made my arguments about proficiencies and how I don't think it'll be the final solution for the game. I posted, how it was pre-AOS, post-AOS, pre-AOS, post-AOS. That gets right down to all the key points right there in a nutshell without having to read all this yada yada yada, about just, ranting. I want to see your points of views, but I don't want to have to sift through all that just to find your arguments. So I mean that's the only thing that annoys me about some of these posts over on U-Haul. Keep them short. Keep them short as possible.
Exactly. Keep them short. Keep your personal rants to yourself, is my opinion. Personal rants. And what was the other thing that I think you and I agreed on as well? The generalizing. We all think that this sucks. Why don't you quit since all your players hate this? When Stratix makes up less than 5% of the entire UO player base. I hate it when people generalize, and I think you and I are both on the same page with that one, because I've seen it. Viceroy and I both are in UO Hall. I don't post often, and neither does Viceroy, except when it's to talk about something UO radio or to comment and slap somebody's hand and go, knock it off. I wish we were moderators, to be honest.
Well, the problem is this, the reason I don't post there often is because, if you want the honest truth, I probably wouldn't be posting there at all if the developers weren't there. But, that's typically the only reason I even post there because, hey, that's the only place I'm going to be able to go and get my opinions in to where the developers might actually read. So, I mean, that's the reason I post on U-Haul. If it wasn't for the official status, I wouldn't be there at all. And the reason is because, I don't like the heavy-handedness. It's like anything you do wrong, God forbid you do anything wrong, like spam, a post multiple times regarding to a thread that it pertains to, well, then you're going to get a 24-hour ban, just like I did a few days ago without any warning. So, if it wasn't for that, I wouldn't be there. So, typically I don't like going to those boards because I think some of their rules are stupid. I'm not saying allow anarchy and chaos terrain, but I'm saying, don't be so freaking heavy-handed. It's simple.
Yeah, no, I agree. Even as an ex-Stratix staff member, I can say flat out, yeah, there does need to be a huge overhaul on the Stratix staff. Some are a little tougher than others on people. I've read your posts. Yours are mostly informative, to be honest, and I'm not being biased, because I wouldn't be. Hell, I think I've tagged you a couple times on a few posts. I've tagged Demos over on UO Forums quite a few times, as a matter of fact. There are a number of people. I'm non-discriminative when I tag people on UO Hall. But the Stratix staff does need to be weeded, is the word I'm looking for. And I'm not slamming Stratix in general. I'm just saying